Very good evening, everybody. Welcome along to Molineux and the Matchday Live preview as Liverpool look to book their place in the fourth round of the FA Cup and, just as importantly, look to find a little bit of rhythm and form in 2023 after 3 matches and no victories so far. Lots to discuss over the course of the next 10 minutes or so in the company of Stephen Warnock. The aftermath of that defeat to Brighton at the Amex on Saturday, some of the issues that currently exist in Liverpool's midfield, the threat that Wolves might pose at their home ground tonight, and Stephen will pick his 11 for this game. So we start with what happened on the South Coast on Saturday afternoon, Stephen, a game that Jurgen Klopp called his worst in management. That's some statement, isn't it, from a guy who's been in it so long? Yeah,
it is a statement, but you could see from the reaction after the game how much it hurt him, how much it hurt the team. He was deflated, which we don't often see from him. Questions were put to him and he didn't have many answers to come back with. I think it was almost a moment of go back to the drawing board and start from scratch, and that's the way it's coming out with his next couple of interviews that he's done before this game, where he just said we've got to get back to basics. It wasn't good enough because of the standards that we know Liverpool have set in the past, but I just think for the standards of Premier League football, it was nowhere near the levels that you'd expect to see. Completely overrun by Brighton, outplayed. Possession stats were, I think it was probably
61%, 16 shots, 9 on target.
Which just tells you everything, and that's just un-Liverpool-like. So we do expect a response. I think the big thing is that we've said it now for a few weeks. We expect a response, and we haven't seen one as such. For me, that Brighton game had been a long time coming. I look at the Aston Villa game, the Leicester game, and then the Wolves game in the previous leg to this, and the reverse fixture. It could have been more as well at Brighton, and that's the concerning part.
Is there something to be said for, well, that is the low point, and you build from there, that it can't get any worse than it was on Saturday? Fingers crossed, otherwise it could be quite a long night here in Wolverhampton. But
correct.
Try and find a little bit of something. You go back to basics, you do the simple things well, and then you work your way up to being the Liverpool that we know and love.
Yeah, I think that's the big thing. I think the hard thing is the changing room after the game. It's being honest with each other as players, as individuals. You don't point fingers, because there's no one within that changing room. Maybe Alisson to a certain degree, but even he made a mistake in the previous game against Wolves. But you look at it and you go, he's been the only player really who's been held with any sort of or kept his dignity, if you like. The rest of the players have really suffered and really found it difficult. So when you think about that, it's about sticking together as a team. It's about going to basics, and the basic things are. It's very interesting when you listen to Jurgen Klopp when he played Manchester City. He often says you beat them with simple passes, with the easy things. So it's seeing the first thing that comes to your mind. It's pressing at the right time, but it's the information that's shared around the pitch as well. There's so many little facets with it that have to come together to make the basics work. But if you go back to them, hopefully it'll start to turn a corner.
For those of us, and that is a lot of people probably watching, who haven't sat in an elite dressing room, what do you want as a player after that? Because I think sometimes the assumption is, well, Jurgen Klopp shouts at them and then Jordan Henderson shouts at them, and that actually probably isn't the way that the modern player reacts now, or will react, as if people just batter them for 2 days.
Well, I think the big thing is that you have to treat every single player individually, and that's the strength of this team, is knowing which players need what. If you were to look at a James Milner or a Jordan Henderson, you could go at them and they'd expect you to. But they know, as senior players, the younger players or some of the foreign players, I don't know, might just need that arm around them, might need that reassurance and little things like that. So it's a very fine balance, and that's what you've got to find, and that's what you've got to get right. But the one thing that you all have to do is you all have to admit that you can get better, and that you're all part of this problem that is in fact happening. You can't be saying, well, I'm doing my job and someone else is letting me down. Your job can always be better. You can always improve on that. You can always help others around you as well.
Tactically, a lot of the discussions for quite some time actually have been about the midfield, and we get the benefit of watching usually from on the halfway line, whichever ground we're in. But to be at the Brentford game, the thing that struck me was going from that third to that third. It was so quick that Brentford were able to play through the thirds.
Yeah, and that is, for me anyway, and I'm the same as you, when I look in those positions and I sit and I try and analyse the game. And this is the one thing that's very difficult, is people will go, well, you didn't play in a team as good as this. It doesn't matter. You can still see it visually, and you can still talk about these things. The gaps from midfield, from defence, midfield and attack, they used to be so compact. You almost used to be able to throw a blanket over the Liverpool team because they compress the spaces so tightly. Now that's far too easy. It's far too open. The gaps are huge between midfield and attack. The turnover of possession and the pressing from the front has dropped off. I think you can clearly see that. The midfielders almost don't know when to go. The defence are trying to hold a high line, but then they're having difficulties because it keeps on getting spun in behind because there's no pressure. So they end up dropping, which then the gaps get bigger. One thing you know is going to happen is, and no matter what level you play at, if you press, a team will get through you at times. That's always going to happen. It happened when we watched this Liverpool team at the very best. Every now and again a team got through you, but it's the confidence to go again. That confidence has gone a bit, and it's that trust again to keep on going, keep on replicating it. I think there's an element of fatigue as well, mentally and physically, and that's totally understandable when you think of the last couple of seasons that we've had.
It goes back to a point that you were making a little bit earlier on, though, about collective responsibility, that you can't just say, well, it's whoever stood in that midfield where the issue is, and that you talked about the pressing from the front, how much they missed with Jota, with Diaz, and obviously Mane, who's no longer at the club. Those three, in terms of pressing from the front, were world class.
Yeah, and I think what you did notice when Diogo Jota came back into the team, you noticed that pressing, that intensity went up a level, and you could see the difference in when he played. Also Diaz as well when he plays, and it's not a slight on the other players, but it's how you press, it's your body movement.
And Nunez and Gakpo are still learning that from a Liverpool
100%,
perspective.
yeah, and I think what we 100% we can say is you can't fault the work rate of Nunez. You see the energy he puts in. It's about doing it in the right positions and knowing that players are behind you, ready to do that. I think there was a few incidences the other day where even midfielders closing down, it's about getting the body positions right. Which way you're showing them, where do you want them to go? You want them to go into bodies, you want them to go into numbers, and again, that's communication, that's organisation, that's leadership on the field, to be able to tell them when you're pressing in behind, I'm with you, I'm right behind you. It's that communication again.
Interesting to see how Wolves will approach this one tonight, because their team selection at Anfield implied that Julian Lopetegui feels he has bigger fish to fry, which is staying in the Premier League, and regardless of winning against West Ham and getting out of the bottom three on Saturday, not much has changed since the first match at Anfield.
No, but the one thing he will do is he'll fancy winning. He'll fancy beating this Liverpool team because he'll have seen the frailties within the team. He'll think, from his own experience of a manager, would I be able to fix that with 3 days work or 4 days on the training ground? That'll be very difficult for Jurgen Klopp to achieve. And if I was a Wolves player now in the changing room, I'd be thinking, let's go out full pelt for the first 10-15 minutes and attack this Liverpool team, see what the frailties are, see how low in confidence they are, and really test them. You might see a different side to Liverpool tonight. You might see a more organised, compact side that don't perhaps play the pretty football that we know they can play, and get back to being dogged, which we know the year they won the league they did time and time again. They ground games out, horrible to play against, and I hope we see that tonight. Interesting as well that Wolves always felt that when they're in the bottom three they were better than that, but a new manager has come in. Sarabia looks like he's about to arrive. Lemina's already come in. That they're investing in the squad this January. I mean, you would think, or you might disagree, but that they'll be fine come the end of the season. I do think they'll be fine. I think they would have struggled under Bruno Lage. I think that the style of football was monotonous, it was boring, it was laboured at times. But now, when you think of when Lopetegui came in, it was very interesting, and you hear so many managers say it, they're not fit enough. But he was right in what he said, and it was so apparent for everyone to see. Whenever you watch Wolves, they couldn't sustain an attack, they couldn't sustain attacks for sort of 50-60 minutes in a game. His job was to come in and to show them that, and to make them understand they've got to get fitter and how to do that. I think we've seen it against Everton, the late goal against them to win the game. I think we saw it at Anfield, the way that they counter-attacked, the speed in which they counter-attacked. They've got the big thing as well is get more out of better players, and he's doing that. And now we're seeing the fruits of the labour of what he's doing on the training pitch, and it's starting to show that they are a very good team. I think the one thing that they miss, and it's what most teams in the Premier League miss, though, is just an out-and-out goal scorer.
Yeah, well, Costa has not fired at all, has he, since he's come back. Jimenez has only scored really cup goals throughout the course of this season. The other thing that they will be, I guess, fuelled and motivated by is that they feel they should already be through because of that goal that was disallowed very late on at Anfield.
Yeah, and if I was in the changing room, I'd feel exactly the same. They would feel very aggrieved. I think, obviously, the Salah goal as well was a huge talking point for me. It's offside, it shouldn't have stood. The second goal, or the third goal, which should have stood as well, by the looks of things from what we've seen on the stills and things like that, that will have been a very difficult decision to take for them, but they're still in the hat. They've still got a chance to do it on home soil as well. They will 100% fancy the chances tonight, and it's incredible when we're talking about Liverpool turning a corner, how quickly things can turn when you look at Wolves, and Wolves are a great showcase for that.
Team-wise, what does Jurgen do?
I don't know.
That's why we get you on here.
Yeah, no, I know, but I had a look at it, and then I've listened to his interviews, and he sort of spoke about there will be changes because of the amount of games. But I've gone with Alisson in goal. I've gone with Robertson at left back and Trent at right back, and then I've gone with Gomez and Konate. I thought Matip struggled the other day. I thought he played well in the first half, but second half he found it difficult. Obviously came off. Midfield three, I've gone for Naby Keita on the left hand side, James Milner on the right hand side, and Jordan Henderson sitting, whether it's Milner or Henderson. But I just think that experience of Milner and Henderson alongside each other, but going as a three, not having the two and one in front. And then depending on if Nunez is fit, I've gone for Nunez through the middle and Gakpo and Salah either side. If Nunez isn't fit, I think it'll be Oxlade-Chamberlain on the left and Gakpo through the middle with Salah on the right.
And if you're Jurgen Klopp, what do you most want to see tonight? Do you want to see real signs of that back to basics and an improved performance, or just think, well, let's just grit one out and make sure we're in the hat for round 4?
It's interesting because you often hear managers, and I don't want to go away from Liverpool too much, but you think of Jesse Marsch at the weekend. He said it was the best performance from a Leeds team, and he said, I don't care about the result almost. As long as them performances are right, the results will follow. I think this is the other way for Liverpool. I think you've got to dig a result out, no matter how ugly it is, and start to build piece by piece, because it's so... Jesse Marsch has got the foundations of what he wants. There's no foundations of what Jurgen Klopp wants at the moment. It's far too far from what we're used to. The gaps in midfield, the closing down is completely off. I think what we want to see tonight is a very difficult game where every time Wolves players pick the head up, there's a Liverpool player in the faces and they can't pick them passes going forward.
Stephen, thank you very much indeed. Let's just point you in the direction of the coverage that is on the way. This match will be available tomorrow at midday, LFC TV Go and LFC TV in full, and all the behind-the-scenes action from here at Molineux will be available on Inside Wolves on the YouTube and Facebook pages. As for tonight, 6:45 Matchday Live, team news from here at Molineux, interviews as well. 7:45 full audio commentary with Steve Hunter and Neil Mellor, and 9:45 Matchday reaction with post-match thoughts from here in Wolverhampton. And hopefully Liverpool will have booked their place in round 4 of the FA Cup, and hopefully it will come with a much improved performance. We'll see you a bit later on. Bye-bye.